Hello guys, and welcome back to Getting Started with LabVIEW. Today we will look into using graphs in LabVIEW. As you all know, there are two main common graphs that is often used in LabVIEW. The graphs are called the chart graphs and also the waveform graph. You can actually find this under the graph palette, and you can actually place them here. So now let's look into each of these waveform chart and waveform graph. Once I have placed these two graphs on the front panel, you will see that the input required for waveform chart and the waveform graph are slightly different. As you can see, it requires only a single double value for waveform chart and it requires an array for waveform graph. The reason is because waveform chart behaves in such a way that it takes in the point as a buffer, and each time the buffer has been full, it will actually overwrites the value of the points in the chart. Whereas for waveform graph, it only displays the array of values in that array. To demonstrate this, I will be using a for loop to generate an array, and with an array of random numbers, and each of the value of the random numbers will be placed into the waveform chart. So I'm going to create an array of a value of 10, and let me put in my random number here. Here I get a value of an array, random numbers, and I also get this. Now what you're going to see is this. When I press run, you'll see that the value of 10 has been plotted on the waveform chart, and an array of a random value value of 10 has been plotted on the waveform graph. If I press run again, what you will see in the waveform chart is that the value is actually being added to the previous value. So what happens here is that in waveform chart, each of this value is being appended until the buffer is full, and once the buffer is full, it will overwrite the previous 10 array values inside. Now to see how this works, I'm going to put this into a while loop with a stop button, and to slow the loop, I will use the wait time ms function, and I will slow the loop to 0.1 seconds, and I place the stop button here. Now if you run this, what you see that the waveform chart immediately overwrites the previous 10 value at the initial, and it continues to move in like a scope, and the waveform graph refreshes itself every value of 10. So this is how we actually see the distinct difference between a waveform chart and a waveform graph. But also waveform chart has a different way of actually how it updates itself compared to waveform graph. We can actually see how the waveform chart updates by right clicking it and going it into advanced, and you can see the update mode. It actually has three types of update modes. The first one is the strip chart, which is what is actually you have seen previously. The second option is the scope chart, and the third option is the sweep chart. Now if I choose scope chart and if I press run again, you will see that it erases once the buffer is full and plots a new value for the waveform chart. And if I were to do the same for sweep, it will show us a sweeping type of behavior, and you can see there's a red line actually appears here that overwrites. So this is one of the distinct difference between the waveform chart and waveform graph, and according to certain situations you might need to consider when you want to use waveform chart and also for waveform graph.